I'm Jamion Christian, and welcome to The Last Call. Our guest today, Cory Heitz, one of the most interesting people in our business, has lived so many lives in the game. High school coach at Lexington Christian and Gonzaga High School in DC, has also worked Nike camps in Taiwan. Currently, Cory is the owner of Prep Athletics, where the focus is on being the trusted voice for families in prep schools and placement of players. Personally, I've known Cory since 2009. I love how he sees an issue in the market and has the passion to serve others by closing the gap. Cory, welcome to our show. How are you?
I'm good, Jamie. How you doing this morning?
I'm awesome, man. I'm awesome. I was excited to get you on here. One of the things we love doing on our show is providing a place where we can share some of the services that help college coaches and college athletes and future college athletes. And, just our conversation a few weeks ago, I thought we got to get you on the show to talk about prep athletics and what you're able to do to service clients.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate having me on. And it was a pleasure having you on the Prep Athletics podcast as well. And, like we said in that show, you're a good friend from the old days. And it's been great following your progress. And now I love the podcast, listen to it every week, and think you're doing great things with it.
Man, I love you. You and I have always had this passion for serving others. I remember the first time that I got a phone call from you. It was about a few of the guys on your team at Lexington Christian, and they were really talented. Actually, worth the 10 or 11 hour drive out there to see them. And you were spot on about it. And you've just been a trusted voice for me through the years. People probably don't realize how many times I reach out to you through the year because you just give me great advice on players and the such always.
And that's the key too about that. Like I didn't know what I was doing back in 2009. I remember calling Duke about one of my players, right? Because I'm gonna call everybody. And I think I tried to call every school in America, and you were one that actually called back. And I thought I was spot on. That player we talked about ended up starting in the ACC his first game as a freshman. And not that I'm some great evaluator of talent, but I did learn over the years that I need to be very careful with which coaches I'm calling about what players, because time is so precious for everybody these days, right? So now I'm strictly in the prep school world, but when I do reach out to a D1 coach or college coach, which I don't do often, it's usually because I believe in a player. I think he needs to be looked at. And these coaches, just through relationships over the years like ours, will actually take the time to at least look at the kid and have the courtesy to say yay or nay, whether they're interested or not. So I think bandwidth is a word I use multiple times a day. Everyone, kids, parents, coaches, everybody only has a limited amount of bandwidth. You want to make sure you're not wasting too much of it, right? And I'm sure you as a former D1 coach would just get hit up every single day from every Tom, Dick, and Harry from all over the world. And you had to sift through all that too, right? So, but what I've learned through the years is if you've got a trusted source out there and they reach out to you, you're going to drop everything, check this out. And that really is a benefit to coaches like you. So it's just if anything, that's a PSA to people out there just blasting out information on players. Like, try to be selective.
It's interesting. Everyone talks about, you got to build relationships. You got to build relationships, and the best way to build a relationship is like just working through. The best way to build a relationship in basketball is working through sort of this recruiting process, and it doesn't mean as a guy recruiting the players, I'm going to get every one of your guys. But the information, just by us having a relationship and knowing each other through the years, the information we've been able to share about a number of topics has really helped a lot of players get into college and decide where they're going to go, whether it's Division I or Division II, Division III. There'll be times you'll send me over and say, what do you think about this kid? And I'll say, well, I think it's a Division III kid. And that allows you to then go and do the best with your business and what you got to be able to do. And just having that kind of trusted communication really matters when you're making high stakes propositions, especially with players.
Absolutely. But here's one thing I want to say about you being a former D1 coach and talking to a player, or having one of your assistants talk to a player. I call this, I'm going to use a different name for it. It's like, it's something that can never die. It's like a poison weed. Like once a kid hears from a D1 assistant during their junior summer, from that point on, they think they're D1.
Yeah.
And it's something you cannot kill in kids. And a lot of my, not a lot, but some of my clients in the past have said, he's a D1 player. University of so-and-so reached out to him junior summer. He's a D1 player. And you can never kill that. And if they don't end up D1, they feel disappointed. Yeah. And I know your side, assistant coaches are calling 300 kids, just, hoping one of those busts out. But for the families, they just, from that point on, my son's a D1 player.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, man, I'm glad you asked it. I love having you on the show because I know we'll be able to just kind of have great conversation about some of this stuff. I think it's all about keeping everything in perspective of what's most important for the player. And I've seen this so many times, and you're mentioning it a bit here. And what I'm hearing you say is that people get distracted on what is best.
Yeah.
And what
Yes.
is best is what's best for your child, what's best for your son, what's best for your player. Not it might not be the most lofty goal. Everything that you want in life is not meant for you. And so if something's really important to you is, hey, I want to go play and I want to play 35 minutes a game for my entire career. Maybe that's a Division I place, right? But maybe that's a Division II place or a Division III place where you can really make that impact if that's really important to you. And I think so many times people, for the sake of level, for the sake of status, they pass on what is most important to them. And I think it's a huge mistake in recruiting, because you end up in this transfer portal. And time and time again, Cory, I would say to a guy, well, I'd have the notes. Me, I'm taking notes on everything they say to me over a 2-year span of what's most important. And I'm going to say, well, what's most important to you now? And you know how many times I say, Coach, I just want to play. I thought I wanted this ACC level. I just want to play. And it's good that they were able to come back to that point. So again, I think people often get distracted. I'm sure you see it as well.
Yeah, and I've got a current scenario going on. I'm going to run by you here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Talk to me.
It's a family, and they committed to a AAA New England prep school.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Since that commitment happened, they haven't put the deposit down. They're getting ready to, and a high academic D3 came in where he would play in his second year.
Mm-hmm.
Great academics, great little town. They won him, great facilities. All right. So he's got
Yep.
NEPSAC AAA prep school, highest league in America, high academic D3 school that wants him, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's a D3 player. And then there's a very low level D1
Mm-hmm.
in a state none of us would want to live in. It's got no academic history, no basketball history, and he'd be a walk on.
Yeah.
So he now went from going to prep school, going to see what happens through this summer and the year, to, oh, there's a great D3 option, right?
Right.
Or there's D1. And I'll be darned, we had this talk about what it's like being a walk on. We had this talk about going D3, right, into a place that's great education. You'll play, you'll like it. And we had the talk about, do you take the chance to embed in yourself and do it a post-grad year?
Yeah.
Right. So you're advising this family. You got those 3 options. I want to hear what your thoughts are.
I'm saying take the post-grad year.
Why?
To me, I mean, this scenario is perfect for this. Take the post-grad year, give yourself another spring and summer to play. Another chance for more coaches to see you play. At worst case scenario, you're going to be a high Division III, high academic kid next year.
Correct.
At worst case scenario. And I think that's important to understand, is that, if that's a high academic D3 and you've got grades like that, you're going to be able to find a place. You've already got one on the table. So going out and to me, that's not even taking a risk on what you're doing there. The walk-on opportunity could be a multitude of things. Let's make sure we talk about walk-ons.
Let's do that, because I want to hear your perspective on how you treat them.
Could be a multitude of things, right? The walk-on perspective could be, we need a GPA boost. It could be we need someone in practice that does well. It could be he's connected to another player that they're interested in. I mean, there's a lot of things that get murky with the walk-on thing, that especially if they're not promising a scholarship within 2 years, 3 years, whatever. So I just think there's a lot there. And so to me, the prep school option for that player makes complete sense. You're going to get another chance to play another year. Your grades are going to be your grades. You might even take some college credits at some of these prep schools, so you'll be able to do some of that. And that might even help the other academic D3s that you're looking at, or academic D1s. I mean, it's so many guys that are close to academic D3s that are also Ivy Patriot League guys, that it's just worth taking that risk, because you can go from, Williams College, one of the best in the country, right? Division III, one of the best. So this is not a diss to Williams, to being Dartmouth, Penn, Bucknell, over a summer pretty quickly. So I just think it's worth taking that risk, especially if you're an academic kid.
Yeah, and I think that's great advice. I'm never going to tell a family what to do, but it is a risk doing the post-grad year. Like, you're gambling on yourself. He's a West Coast kid, so he'll be seen by schools, especially at AAA, probably 200 schools and a bunch of scouts that would never have seen him out west. So you're going to get that much more exposure. And guess what? That D3 school is going to want you after a year, because you're going to be way more seasoned way more ready to step in and prepare. And I asked the kid too, I said, if this D1 school wasn't D1, it was D2, would you consider? He said no.
Right.
And that tells me that's an ego play right there, right?
Yeah,
But
agreed.
what I want to ask you about is, being at Mount St. Mary's, being at VCU, William & Mary, Bucknell, George Washington, Siena, all these D1 spots you've been. Walk me through, especially when you're a head coach, what your thoughts were on walk-ons and how you would procure them for your program.
Yeah. I honestly, I think some of the best relationships I have are with my walk-ons. My first president at Mount St. Mary's told me this right after the moment I signed my contract. He said, I only got one thing of advice for you for basketball. When you're up 20, play your walk-ons. And I thought that was a really interesting piece of advice from someone who's not a big basketball guy, but understands the culture of a university and the culture of a building and culture of a place. And I think walk-ons are super important to the ecosystem of basketball. The way we would attack it, we actually went a little opposite at GW. We went with 11 scholarship players my last year, and we went with more academics. Always 16 guys on the team. So we went with more walk-ons the final year. Because we're in a high academic place, it made sense to just really focus on the guys that are going to be on the floor and then make sure we had a set unit of guys who are not going to play but could be really, really aggressive on the floor and help our team in other ways, especially with building our culture the way we wanted to get it to become. We did this, I'll tell you this, because guys always say, I'm going to walk on and I'm going to earn my way into the rotation. And I'm not saying that it doesn't happen, but we did this research and the reason we went to this at GW with only 11 scholarship guys, we're actually going to go down to 10 scholarship guys. But the reason I say is we did the research through my first 9 years of coaching. We only had one player that came in his career starting at the number 10 on the roster that made it into the regular rotation of the top 8 or 9. Only had one player that was not playing at the beginning of the year that moved into it. And they were not a walk-on. Those are scholarship level guys. There's 13 scholarship level players on a team, 13 guys you're going to give money to. I like the number 15 or 16, so we always have 3 extra walk-ons. So people don't understand, to go from 16, 15, 14 to beat 13, 12, 11, 10 just to get into the top 9. And the 9 is usually a player that plays when someone's hurt or plays in certain situations. Most people play 8 people. So I think the walk-on thing is tough. Now we would reward our walk-ons. So we would do it a couple different ways. I think this is important. We'd bring a player in as a manager for the first year. And earn their way onto the team their second year. And it'd basically be a redshirt year for them when they're a manager. Earn their way onto the team the second year. And then eventually I always did rewarding my walk-ons. So we actually gave a lot of walk-on scholarships as seniors. And I wanted to get into a system where this was happening routinely. We have enough guys coming up through our organization, through our programming, where they earn that scholarship on the end and they see that happening for them on the front end, but we really made those guys work for it. And again, none of those guys played. We're not even talking about playing. We're just talking about having a chance to have money to be on the roster. We're not talking about playing them in games. I think I played maybe one walk-on in 10 years of head coaching, and that made into
the garbage time.
Well, no. I mean, in the regular rotation. Now, I would always play them. I'd always play them when we're up, and I wouldn't hesitate to throw them in. But I'm talking about being a regular rotation player, a top 8 player, a top 9 player on a roster. We only had maybe one guy through my 10 years of coaching that crossed that threshold. So it's a lot. I mean, people don't realize I'm going to earn my way. It's hard to get from 16 to 9 is where you got to basically get to.
I love that analogy, but here's what I think it is, Jamion, is I think we've seen such a proliferation of TikTok videos where they sneak in the player and they hand them the scholarship and everyone goes nuts for them. And I think all these walk-ons are like, well, I can't wait for my TikTok moment when the coach awards me a scholarship. Yeah. And I'm glad you did that for your seniors through the system you set up, but how often does that happen? Right. I
don't think a lot of people do. I mean, a lot of people hold on to, it's bizarre to me because I did the research for 10 years. We had one guy from number 10 to make it into the top. He ended up being an all-conference player. Right? He came in as a freshman at 10. And so I just started looking, going 11, 12, 13. We never play. We always say, oh, we're going to redshirt them. They never made it into the rotation. Now some of those guys went other places and played well. So that means we had a good 10 guys ahead of them. It didn't mean they were bad players. It just meant the circumstances were tough. And so when I look at it, Cory, I just think, man, like, and I love that moment for them, to give them their TikTok moment, to give them that and their appreciation for it and their joy for it. And to me, they earned it. They earned that right. And if I could have given it to them earlier, I'd have given it to them earlier. But I think you got to decide, do you want to play and be on the floor, or do you want to give everything you got in practice every day with a limited opportunity to have a chance to play? I'm talking about a chance to play. We're not talking about, like, you know how hard it is to go, you're not in the regular rotation. I'm going to sub you in the last 5 minutes of the game. We're down 20. You score 15 points in the last 5 minutes. You know how hard it is for me then to turn around and play you the next game? Right? Like, I just don't think that people realize, and it doesn't mean that I wouldn't say, hey, man, maybe we should play this guy. You know, that might be the conversation, but you're so embedded to those top 9 guys, essentially. It's just hard for those guys to come in and kind of work their way in.
But once again, my theory is, you know, these walk-ons are D1 or bust kids. So they've got to make that decision. Am I okay being the 13th guy through 16th guy for 4 years, maybe playing just a few minutes, maybe getting a scholarship if I'm lucky? Or do I go to the place that's a better fit? I'm going to hit the floor. I'm going to score some points, you know, being in the action. Every kid's got to make that decision for themselves. But I know there's been D1 or bust kids since the beginning of time. It just seems now, I don't know what's going on. I don't know if it's something changed or just my perspective. It seems that's almost worse now than ever before. Are you feeling that too from your end?
It's just such a status deal. You know, how are we measuring success now is not based off of the performances that you're having. It's based off of the number of likes that I'm getting on social. It's based on me being connected to this good player or this good team. Is how we're basing success. It doesn't have to be a good team. It could just be a D1 team, how we're getting connected to that. I can't tell you how to find happiness. You know, I know this much. I'm a competitor. I wanted to be on the floor, and I felt like as a competitor, I could help a team win. And I always wanted to be around people that had that sort of mentality. But this, you know, we're a little bit different. I mean, guys see the world differently now, and they see it from a 30,000-foot view more often than maybe we did as children growing up in it. But I think it's about knowing what you really want, and then going and getting it. If you want to go play, hey, I want to be a player, I want to play a ton. There's a place, and there's a coach who's on your phone, who's texting you up, who's blowing you up. That guy is going to play you.
Yeah.
The guy that hits you up once every 3 or 4 weeks, he's probably not going to play you. The guy that's hitting you up every single day, he's going to play you. He's committed to you being at your best and have an opportunity.
Yeah, and for those kids that are D1 or bust too, I said go to the Sagarin ratings and go to the bottom 50 schools. Yeah. I said there are schools there that, you know, turn over coaches every 3 years. Yep. No one's in the stands. No one's ever heard of them. They don't have academic prowess that's going to help you in the real world. So, like, those are D1 programs. Yeah. But, like, what's your experience going to be like in that program too? Right. Like, is that hole in your heart going to be filled being at a school in the bottom 10 of the RPI rankings every year? Like, anyway, everyone's got to make their own decision. It's just stuff I like batting around because, you know, you've talked to kids before, and some of them do have delusions of grandeur. Some parents do. But, you know, I don't know if it's ever going to get any better, but that's fine. You want people to reach for their goals too. I get that as well. Yeah. It's
so interesting because so many times, like, you'd have that conversation on the front end. Would you want to go to this school? And they'd be like, no, you know, I don't want to go to that school. And then they'll say a year or two in college, and then they'll go to that school happily.
Yeah.
You know, they'll say, oh, like, I want to go and do that. And I always wonder, like, well, what if you just did that from the beginning? Would you have been happier, or would you have then been saying, hey, I need to transfer again after having 2 years of success? You know, and I just think the ability to be content with something. And look, I'm a guy who left Siena after 1 year to go to George Washington. So, you know, I can talk about not being content or being content because I've experienced it. You know, I've experienced making a quick decision and maybe not thinking it all the way through, or not seeing all the potential pitfalls, or maybe seeing it all. You know what I mean? And just because you have a good plan doesn't mean that it's always going to work out for you. But what is true is that wherever you choose to go, you've got to be ready to A, perform, B, adjust, C, be aware of your strengths and your weaknesses, and D, be ready to handle whatever comes out that door. And that might be you playing, and it might not be you playing.
Yeah, and I was a D1 or bust kid too, Jamie. I mean, before we got on, I told you I was, there were 5 members of my family before me to play D1, and so I was D1 or bust. I mean, I was 6'7" as a 16-year-old in high school, and I had a 7-foot father, 7-foot uncle, 6'10" uncle, 7-foot cousin,
You're the
and
small guy at the family reunion.
I was, and I marketed myself. My dad was really good at. My dad helped his baby brother get to Kentucky,
Mm-hmm.
right? And he was in the recruiting. He backed up Sam Bowie and Melvin Turpin,
Pretty good
who were
team.
2 lottery picks,
Yeah.
right? And my dad helped him navigate that. My dad helped my cousin, who ended up playing at Purdue for 4 years and then playing 14 years in the NBA. So when I came around, we knew about prep schools, we knew about levels and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
So we marketed me as the white David Robinson, right?
Okay.
Hey, you're getting me at 6'7", but once I get to college, I'm going to hit my growth
Yep.
spurt just like everyone else in my family and be 7'2" All American.
Mm-hmm.
I've been 6'7". I'm still at 46, 6'7". I've not hit my spurt yet. But my thought was, I had to go D1. I was like, I'm
Mm-hmm.
good enough. I'm going to be a star there. I have to go there. I cannot go somewhere else. Even though NAIA schools and D3s back in Kentucky wanted me and they saw me play all the time because we're on a really good team, I was D1 or bust. And I tell you what, it was a hard time playing at Air Force. I didn't get one varsity minute there. I just wasn't good enough. I wasn't big enough. But I'll be darned, I gave it everything I had. And I can sleep at night now knowing I took a chance and it
Yeah.
didn't work out. But that I've got satisfaction that I tried to play at the top level and I just wasn't good enough.
Yeah.
So I needed to do that. That was more important
Yeah.
for me than going to a D3 school, getting a degree I would actually enjoy versus engineering and actually playing. I needed to do that. So when kids are D1 or bust, I might not agree with it, but I understand it because I know how that is when that's coursing through your veins.
Yeah. No, I get it. That's the one thing is, when I talk to kids, I sort of get it. Like that's why I pride myself on having really good relationship with my players and former players, because I just give them both sides of it. Also, I give them all sides of it. Whether it's 2 sides, 3 sides, 4 sides, I give them all sides of it. And now you got to go and live with whatever that's going to be. But let's go and put everything we got into it and be happy with whatever the result is. Let's not get 2 weeks into it and go, man, I should have done this.
Right.
Let's go. Let's dive into the deep end with it and make a real commitment. And I really feel like when you make the real commitment, at the end of it, you always feel pretty good about what you did. You might say, oh, I could have played here, I could have this, but you know what? I gave everything I have. I looked myself in the mirror and say, it was my risk to take. It wasn't my mom's risk. It was my risk to take. I took the risk, and I love where we are. I love the person I became while I'm trying to go through this part of the journey, and now it's time for something next. So whatever's next.
Yeah, and you mentioned that. So let's go back to that kid with those 3 choices: the
Yeah.
prep school, the D3, or the D1. The reason I would tell him to go prep school is I don't want him laying in bed when he's 46 going, I wonder what
Yeah.
if. Like, there were 2 okay options. There a D3 wasn't excited about, a D1 walk on in a bad location at a bad school, or maybe if I had taken this chance, what could have happened? So that's my pitch when I talk to families about prep schools. And this is the pitch to the parents is you don't want your kid laying in bed at middle age wondering, what if? What if?
Yeah. And what's interesting? I think we all have our what ifs. It's really about what ifs you want. And I think what you're saying is you don't want the what if of not going and trying to compete and trying to be your very best and figuring out where that's going to lead me. And I think that's really interesting. And that's what I'm kind of hearing. And I think most athletes that love to compete are in that world. Let me take the risk on myself, kind of figure it out, and whatever it's going to be.
Do you know they did a study with hospice workers, and they asked people, in their last few days, like, talk to me about your life. What do you regret? And most people regretted not taking more chances.
Yeah.
Right. So what I tell, what we say in our family a lot is deathbed. It's just one word we use. Like one, if something stupid we're arguing about, like deathbed, are we going to think about this at the end of our long life? Hopefully, no. Also on deathbed, like, should I have taken a chance that maybe was a little bit out of my reach? And if I fell, great, you're going to learn from that. If you succeed, great, you took a great chance. Like, to me, taking chances, whether it's walking on D1, which no one else might believe in, but we're just the outside peanut gallery. If that kid wants to take that chance and it works out for him and he meets his best friend and his future wife and his future employer, awesome. Or if it goes bad, he can learn from that too. So to me, like, we know now, being our age, like when bad things happen, actually a lot of good comes out of that, right?
Yeah.
And when good things happen, sometimes there can be bad consequences from things going right too.
Absolutely.
So it only takes a lot of life lived to kind of learn these things. But man, after hearing that study from the hospice workers, it's like, I told my wife and I, like, let's just take more chances. We fail, but my gosh, we're here for such a short time. Like, let's swing for the fences and see what happens. So I kind of want kids to do that as well, but you also want them to be measured and make right decisions. So we're talking in circles here a little bit. There's no right answer. If we had a crystal ball, it'd be worth trillions of dollars. You could see what's going to happen, but then that would take the magic out of it too. Like, you don't want to know what happens. You don't want to know what day you die. I don't. If it's tomorrow, so be it. If it's 100, so be it. Like, I want that excitement of kind of not knowing what's coming.
Yeah.
There was let me stop real quick. There was a Twilight Zone where a guy was a gambler and made a deal with the devil that he would never lose in gambling. And he made it. He sold his soul. Then he went to the casino and never lost. And he hated it because there was no juice in it anymore. So he went back to the devil. He's like, hey, can I start losing again? The devil's like, nah, I got your soul. This is what you wanted, right? And the dude was filthy rich and miserable because the juice was gone.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And I mean, and so much of that is the risk that you take. There is a thrill in not knowing the outcome. I mean, this. I get tons. We've talked about this off air before. I get tons of criticism. I love seeing after 1 year. I go to GW. I get fired after 3. I had a 10-year contract at Mount St. Mary's before that, so I'm the only guy to go from 10 years to 5 year to 3 years and out. Right. So and everyone goes, man, like you probably wish you would have stayed at Siena or did this. And it's like, hey, man, I took the risk because I felt like GW is a place you could win a national title. And I don't know how many chances in life you get a chance to work at a place that has spent an entire season top 10 in the country at some point. I mean, I don't know how many times you get to do that. So you take the risk. Now, it didn't work out. It just sort of is what it is. But like, it was my risk to take. And I didn't want to look around and go, man, I didn't give myself a chance, And so like, I was talking Daniel Pink, The Power of Regret, was a guest on our show. And we talked a ton about regret. And I thought it was like a great, like, what is regret? And like you said about the hospice workers, people look back on the chances they didn't take, not the chances that they took. And that's just the reality of it is like, I agree, take more chances. And again, I think when I say take more chances, again, take calculated chances. Like, don't quit your job and say, I'm going to go be a poker player and go, don't do that. There's a lot of guys, a lot of people in Vegas running around that decide don't do that. But maybe learn to play poker at a high level before quitting your job, before saying, I'm going to go be a professional poker player. Right. And give yourself the best chance you can to go be successful at it.
Yeah. And there's a quote, I'm going to butcher this, but you'll get the gist of it. It's a baby bird staying on the edge of the nest. And I think it's talking to a non-bird, right? Let's say it's a squirrel. Mm-hmm. And like I said, I'm ruining this. It's probably Confucius or Aesop or somebody. And the bird goes, what if I fall? And the other animal goes, but what if you soar?
Yeah.
Right. And the bird's going to soar. That's what it's genetically and evolutionarily made to do. So I love that. Take that jump. You could fall, but you could also soar to heights you never thought were possible, just like you taking the jobs you took.
Yeah. When I was at Bucknell, and Coach Flannery had just been retired. He had just retired abruptly. So we went from being, top in the Patriot League, feeling great, to, hey guys, I'm going to retire. It was just a complete scramble on everybody. I was 25 years old at the time, and I'm driving to go interview at William & Mary, actually. And Shaver hadn't offered me the job, but I had a couple of the job offers on the table. And it was like, I turned down a couple of job offers, kind of waiting on this William & Mary thing. Was a gamble. And I remember pulling over this gas station, and, they always have those cards up at the gas station. And I looked over, and it was a black card, and on it said, leap and the net will appear. And I thought, wow, like, no, maybe it was just, maybe a bunch of people picked up that card. I don't know. But I picked it up that day, and I was like, I'm making the right decision here. And I felt like it was the most perfect timing to see something to take a chance on. At the time, Mike Young was at Wofford. He offered me a job there. St. Francis PA offered me a job there. I could have stayed. Like, I had a bunch of really good options. Bucknell, I could have stayed there for Dave Paulson, who's a great guy, great coach. And I was going to go to William & Mary, who'd only had 1 or 2 winning seasons in the last 15 years. And it's just, I think leaping and it sets all your, gets your brain going in the right direction and go and attack something a little bit differently. And I think sometimes having your back against the wall matters, and it helps.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
Now, when you got into the prep school consulting, started doing this, what made you, again, you love the game, but what made you say, you know what, this is an area that people really need help in, that I can serve clients for?
Yeah, well, let me step back and tell you how I even got into the whole prep school world.
Yeah, talk to me.
So, yeah, when I was in high school, my cousin Brad Miller, who I mentioned played in the NBA for 14 years.
He's a pretty good player.
Brad Miller twice.
Brad Miller once said, before there was Europe, there was Indiana. And he talked about European players. So it's a great understanding of skill bigs.
He's had some other quotes. I think he made Sports Illustrated once for saying, "It's just peaches and gravy to me." That doesn't even make sense, but that's the kind of stuff that comes out of his mouth. But we grew up together. He was six months older than I am. He got the tall genes. I got the smaller genes. And his senior year of high school, we decided his dad was out of the picture. So his mom and my dad are siblings, and they thought it would be best for him to get out of Indiana. When he got up there, it changed his life. Max was a father figure. He had all these guys from the big city on his team, and Brad played great. They played in those big time, games against Fork Union, St. Thomas More, Winchendon back in the days. And Brad ended up choosing Purdue. Had a great career there. Big Ten Rookie of the Year. Set all types of records at Purdue, and then went undrafted to the NBA before he got drafted. So I saw that and all the benefits that prep school did for Brad. And we knew that I wasn't a D1 player coming straight out of my high school. I was 6'7", 195 pounds, and our team was really good. We had a runner to Mr. Basketball on our team. Rick Pitino's son was on our team. We had a kid go to Notre Dame, Georgia. So we were stacked, and I needed an extra year.
There we go.
So I went to Lexington Catholic, and it was a good high school, a lot of good players. And I knew I needed an extra year if I wanted to play D1, and we knew that'd be a post-grad year at a prep school. So luckily, I was being recruited by Navy, Army, and initially committed to Navy. I was going to go to their prep school, and then we had a falling out, and someone said, "What about Air Force?" So we went and visited Air Force. I committed there. My plan was to, grow 5 inches of prep school and then go to West Virginia, where my dad played. And because I got all these letters from big time schools saying, "Hey, we like you. You just got to grow like your family."
Yeah.
And
your bloodlines are so strong that people are going to look at your bloodlines and say, "This guy's going to be 6'9" at worst case scenario."
Yeah, my 7 foot uncle played Oklahoma. Dad played at West Virginia, got drafted, and played pro in Europe. Baby brother played at Kentucky when he went to the Final Four, got drafted. My cousin Brad played in the NBA 14 years. His sister was 6'5". She played D1. So good bloodline, like a thoroughbred, you take me for potentially what I can do. And so I did a year at the prep school Air Force, realized this is my only D1 option. So I stayed there. So played at Air Force, JV program, was an officer for 5 years. I find myself after the Air Force living in Canada. And I worked a camp up there with a guy named Fred Crowell, and he's one of the founders of Athletes in Action. And there was this really tough kid from Vancouver that I thought had a chance, MVP of the camp. And I said, "Let's see if I can get you in a prep school." So I actually called Brad up. We got him into MCI, where Brad went, and the kid got an NAI full ride out of it, right? Then I moved back to Kentucky and started seeing a couple kids like, "Hey, you're a good player. Maybe you should go to prep school too and see what happens." And over the course of a few years, I sent 8 kids from Kentucky to do post-grad years, and 7 went D1, right? So this is back in the day where I just knew a few prep schools, didn't know much, was just kind of figuring out on the fly. And when I got to DC and started coaching at Gonzaga, I started talking to college coaches like yourself and said, "Hey, if I was going to visit a couple prep schools, which one would you recommend?" And, some common names came up, like St. Thomas More, Worcester Academy, Northfield Mount Herman, Hargrave Military. So I started visiting schools, and I would beg people, Jamion, to help them with placing them in prep schools. Just beg them. And every now and then someone would let me, entertain them, and their kid would get placed and it'd go great. And then it started picking up, started getting some international kids through Taiwan, started getting a friend here would reach out to me, started spreading here, spreading there. And fast forward to today, and somehow accidentally it turned into a full-blown international prep school consulting agency. And I love it. Every day I love it because I wake up with emails from kids all over the world wanting to, reach this dream of playing in college in America. And a lot of them, prep school is the route they've got to go to do it. So over the years, I've placed kids at over 55 different prep schools and from over 25 different countries. I've got kids on, national teams across the world. I've had kids at the highest, D1 level, all the way down to JUCO and everything in between. And I just love it. I love it because if a kid's looking for a prep school, there's a lot of them out there, and I help narrow down all of them to the right fitting ones for each family. Because just like D1 programs, prep schools are all created different, and they're all different shapes and sizes. So I'm kind of like a prep school basketball guidance counselor for families.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And I feel like with this market right now, with everyone just focusing so much, first of all, I want to say, I think coaches are making such a huge mistake of only focusing on the portal. I think it's lazy. I think it's lazy. Number one, I think you always want to take the best players, whether they're high school or college, whatever. And I've talked to so many coaches and no, we're just going to wait for the portal. We're just going to wait for the portal. And I think that's such I think that's a huge gamble. I think it's a much bigger gamble than what you think. And so I feel like your market right now with the prep school becomes super important. The ability to be able to play more games, get older, get stronger, and to present yourself. Because like all things, all markets, things will start to balance back out. And the prep school thing is going to really start rolling furiously. I would bet starting next year when you start getting some of these 5th and 6th year guys out of college, where you're going to want an older player who's been coached, who's more experienced, who maybe you haven't had a chance to watch so thoroughly as before.
Yeah, the challenge I see to that, well, here's my thoughts on that. One, the transfer portal, I think some coaches are learning that this might not be the way to go because there's baggage with it. But we've seen teams that have won the national title in recent years that have had transfers that have worked out successfully, right? So are coaches going to keep taking chances on that? Yes. And two, not every prep school player is ready to step in and help a program right away. The ones that are, they're going to be fine. But that next tier down, our coach is going to take a chance to develop players with the new market when that player might get developed and then transfer and leave. So it's a weird future for basketball and everything. And what I tell families is, look, we don't know what's going to happen. All you can do is still do what you can control.
Yep.
Keep your grades up, work as hard as you can. And if you do go to prep school, at least you're going to be around a head coach that's an advocate for you, right? And what people need, especially high school players need nowadays to get in front of people like you, is an advocate, right?
I love that.
Johnny can email you, Jamion, and you might or might not get back to him. But if a prep school coach you have a relationship calls you about that same Johnny, you're going to look at him, right? Mm-hmm. Because that prep school coach is not going to ruin his integrity on a player's ability, right? And that also, that prep school coach is not going to waste your time either if he doesn't think he can play at the level you're coaching at. So that's why I tell families all along, like, yeah, you're playing for the exposure, you're playing for the development, you're paying for the academics come with prep school and all the maturity, but you also get an advocate out of that. Now, there's some coaches in the prep school world, like Jerry Quinn, who've been doing it 40 years and who have a black book that's probably as thick as a phone book. And then you got other prep school coaches that it's their first year coaching, right? And then you got everything in between. So like, that's what's so important about looking at these prep schools is not who's been there in the past, not if your AU teammate went there, not if you've seen them on ESPN. It's what's the right fit for you. Like, which coach do you want, as your advocate? Which coach do you want doing skill development? Which coach do you want yelling at you? Which coach do you want determining your playing time? And ultimately, which coach do you want, calling college coaches on your behalf? So for me, Jamie, my thesis sentence when talking to families and players about prep school is the most important thing, if finances are, even across all these schools you're talking to, is choosing it based on your relationship with the coach.
Yeah, it's so good. And it needs to be like said again, like choosing it based on your relationship with the coach. Then the factors that make that prep school opportunity good for you or bad for you. God, it's really good. Like you talk about, you bring up Barry Queen. Like If you call Jerry or Jerry called you about a player, he can help you. Period. And you just know that through the years. And so that advocate really does matter. And it doesn't mean that. Now the other thing is, if you play for a guy like Jerry Quinn and you don't do what he's asked you to do, right? Like, you got to pick the right one. Like, if you're a guy who's a little bit undisciplined, you might want to go with the first-year head coach.
So let's talk about that real quick. So I've got a player
let's
now. I got a player now who went to a prep school for a post-grad year and just kind of went half speed. Had a lot of injuries, went home a lot, and he's wanting D1 walk-ons. And the coach is in a tough position because he's like, the family paid money.
Yeah.
I got to keep my integrity, but like, it's hard for me to recommend to a D1 program like this kid's going to be that guy.
Yeah.
So like sometimes coaches are put in tough spots too, and this kid made it difficult for himself by not going full blast, which he's going to have to do at a Power 5 school as a walk-on. So
yeah.
we've been having those discussions, and it's tough, So I think that coach still has to be honest and be like, hey, he's good size, good player, good pedigree. It's just he needs to get an extra gear, and you got to know that going in if you take this kid. So these coaches got to be very careful. But that's the thing too. Like if Jerry Quinn calls a coach up, even in COVID, even when everyone's gun shy and looking at the portal, from my point of view, you take that kid.
Yeah.
You take that kid sight unseen if Jerry Quinn's calling you.
Yeah. I'm going to say, when can I come up? And I'll come up that week if Jerry calls.
There should be no hemming and hawing.
Right.
There should be none of you should be like, yes, because Jerry Quinn is not going to. By the way, Jerry Quinn is a Hall of Fame coach at St. Thomas More. For those that don't know, been doing this 40 years. Andre Drummond went there. Great basketball tradition. So that's who Jerry Quinn is. But you have to take it. And coaches are gun shy. Coaches are so gun shy because there's so many angles: international, JUCO, portal, prep school, high school. But man, Jerry's making your life easy. Is the way I think about it.
If he calls and says, hey, I think I got a guy for you. Like he'll call you and say, I think this guy can play in your league. Or he'll say, I think I got a guy for you. I think you should come see him. Like he'll give you a couple of ranges in there, and either way, you're going to go and see, and go and check it out. But I wanted to comment on this. I hate when kids don't do what's needed to be done. You talk about getting distracted. Those are some of the harder conversations is when a kid just got distracted, leaving a prep school situation, because the prep school coach has a desire to make sure all his kids are placed. That's one thing I think is great about prep school coaches is that they want all their kids to go and be placed, just like a JUCO coach.
They have to place all their players.
They have to place them. So they're working for it. But they also need the back end with the college coaches to keep coming back. So you can't place a bad one. You got to really be honest. And I think that's what's unique about it. But I hate when the kid doesn't do what he's supposed to do. And I'm not talking about playing. Everyone thinks it's all about his points and all this other stuff. If you play for Jerry Quinn, you're the sixth man for Jerry Quinn. I can come and watch you and say, you know what, this guy could play in the NEC, he could play in the MAC. This guy can shoot the ball. He's got good size. I can watch that stuff. But my question will be, well, how did he act when he was only playing 20 minutes a game? And if he didn't show up for practice the next day or showed up late for workouts the next day or whatever, that concerns me, because you might not play 20 minutes for us, right away. And so I think those kind of conversations and putting yourself in the right position, just doing what you're supposed to do every single day. It's amazing how many of those conversations are, man, this kid does everything he's supposed to do every day. He's not going to be a problem. All right, we can afford to take that because that's a risk too. You don't know how talented the kid is, but you know how he's going to work. We can afford to take that risk on the talent if we know he's going to work and do what he's supposed to do every day.
How about this trope?
Yep. My
son's a hard worker. What's your reply to that?
I mean, everybody thinks their son's a hard worker.
But shouldn't that be baseline? Shouldn't that be not even mentioned?
Yeah. If a dad says that to me, I take, this is gonna sound bad, I take everything a parent says about their child sort of with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
Because we love our children and we're gonna always see the best in them. And there's a few dads you get out there, I'll tell you the truth. Okay. All right. Those guys are valuable, but my son's a hard worker. Got it. To me, like, what does that mean? Does that mean you were waking him up at 6 every day, taking him to the gym? Because I'm not waking up at 6 every day, taking him to the gym.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Does that mean that you want it more than him? No, I don't know. I just have to evaluate these sort of situations. Like there's a kid named Finley Bizjack who's going to Butler. We recruit him really hard at GW. Fantastic player, person. And when I talked to him the first time, he was like, "Yeah, coach, I love basketball. I work hard." Well, what does that mean? He goes, "I ride my bike to the gym every day at 6 a.m." His mom didn't have to wake him up. Stepdad didn't have to wake him up. Brother didn't have to wake him up. He was going every day. Right? Trainer didn't have to pick him up. No, this is what I'm doing. That to me, that's working hard. And I think I want to say this: the origin of how you work. Am I working out of fear that I'm not going to be good enough? Am I working out of love because I want to be the best version I can be? Am I working out of fear because my parents are great and I want to be great? The origin of how you work matters for how you're going to go and play.
Love that.
And so when someone says, "Hey, my son's a hard worker," I just immediately go through this line of questioning in my mind that I'm now trying to figure out, maybe he is, maybe he isn't, but it's more about like, what's his origin of work and why he wants to work that way. And then I'm going to really try to follow up and find out if other people view him as a hard worker or not.
Yeah. When I used to be at Gonzaga's gym, assistant coaches and head coaches would pull me aside and be like, "Hey," and I was just an assistant there, but like, "Hey, how does Johnny work?
Yeah.
What's his work ethic? What's he like as a kid?" This is stuff that people don't see in the games, or these guys don't see in practice maybe on a daily basis. So yeah, that's stuff coaches are asking.
And in DC, you can't hide. Like, everyone has 2 different trainers, 2 different agility coaches, 2 different AAU coaches, youth coaches. I mean, in DC particularly, you can't hide. So if you work hard, it's known. Most of those kids work harder than the norm of most places that I've been. But there's different levels of that even there.
Yeah, it's a great place for high school hoops. Absolutely.
Yeah. How do you decide what makes a good prep school for each person?
It's a great question. So the first thing I look at when, I decide to work with a family is, what are the kids' academics, right? Because right there, that can determine what prep school you're going to. How good is the player on the court? What are his goals? And then the biggest thing is the financial piece, right? So let's assume the finances are good. The family is going to get aid.
Because most kids have to pay something to go to prep school, correct?
Something, unless you qualify. So if a family makes less than a certain amount of dollars a year, say $75K, there's chances for the kid to go free.
Wow.
So I've got 2 kids I've worked with over the years that have gone completely free. One is a 7'2", 15-year-old from our Sudanese refugee camp, right? So that kid, has a chance to be good, and he's going to bring people in the gym being 7'2", right? There's not many 7'2" kids running around. And the other one was he's a current 8th grader in Saskatchewan who came from the Philippines, 4.0 GPA, and he's a guard, but his parents make nothing. They work 3 jobs each, barely surviving. And this kid has a love of the game. He's got a fire inside of him. He plays like an alpha. And we're giving him a full ride to a prep school starting in the fall. And they're paying for everything, his airfare, his computer, his clothes, his books for the next 4 years, which will equate to about $300,000 at the end of the day, right? Which is huge. So those are examples that can happen. Then there's families that can write the check for the full tuition, which can be between $53,000 and $73,000, and then there's everything in between. So one, I help families figure out what their range is and if there'll be options for them or not, because these are expensive places, right? And there's only so many roster spots, and people from all over the world are trying to get in to these prep schools, right? So your question was, what makes a good one, right? Well, there's a lot of good ones, right? But what makes, let's take your son for an example. If he's 17 and we're looking at options for him, right? Depending on what you guys want, that will help me to start out first of all. So some kids need playing time. Some kids like me who were on a good team in high school, I didn't get to play much. I needed playing time. Okay, so I'm probably not going to go to a Brewster that on average has 10 D1 guys on their team every year, right? Because I might be the 11th, 12th, 13th player on a team, and I already did that in high school. So I might need to go to a school with a little bit less talent so I can get reps.
Right.
Other kids, right, might have played 40 minutes a game in Idaho and just not been tested. They might need to be the 13th man on Brewster so they can go up against Donovan Mitchell, right? And guys going to Kansas, Syracuse on a daily basis because they've already gotten the minutes Now they need to go up against better players to develop, right? To
Right.
get ready for that college grind. And then there's coaching styles, right? These schools, if you do a post-grad year, the academics aren't that tough, right? You can take electives, you can take AP classes, you can take college credits. So post-grad year, the academics aren't too challenging. If you want to retake classes, you can take one, retake one. If you've got an IEP/learning disability, you can retake up to 3. So those are things that a lot of these prep schools offer. But I'm going to come back to my thesis statement I use with families all the time is you got to decide on the coach.
Yeah.
Right. You're going to get exposure. You're going to get better. You're going to get faster. You're going to get more emotionally mature. And by emotionally mature, I mean, you're going to get homesickness out of your system. You're going to have to get up on your own for 6 a.m. practices without mommy or daddy telling you. Have to learn how to do laundry, make a snack, turn in your papers on time. So it's going to happen at all the prep schools. So what do you do then? How do you discern it? You look at the coach and the program you want to play for, right? And sometimes I've got such a murderer's row of coaches that these families are talking to that they have a hard time deciding. And the way I equate a post-grad year is a one and done. You're going for 1 year, and then you're going to be off to the league, right? And that league, I mean college ball. So do you go to Kansas, Arizona, North Carolina, Kentucky? Doesn't matter. All of them are going to be great for you. All of them are going to get you to the next level, especially if you're a lottery pick. What experience do you want? You want to play for Coach Cal and be part of the Kentucky Brotherhood? Do you want to go out west and play for Arizona? Do you want to play at UNC in the ACC or at Duke? It's the same thing in the prep school world. And we have such heavy hitter coaches up there with amazing personalities and amazing track records that for some families, it's tough to choose between these schools. But what a great problem to have, right?
Yeah.
And another example I give is like, I'm going to put you in front of an Audi, a BMW, and Mercedes, right? You can't go wrong driving any of these cars. They're all going to get you to your destination. But which one do you want to put your butt in the seat for?
Yeah.
Is the Mercedes better? Do you like the BMW how it drives? Do you like the look of the Audi? Same thing for prep school coaches. You got to pick which guy you want to be yelling at you and determining your future for those 9 months. So I always fall back on the coach, Jamion, and I always put on the families to pick. And the big thing I use nowadays, it's a little woo-woo, but I've started doing this in the past 2 years, is telling kids to follow their gut. Like when they talk to these coaches for the first time, they know after they talk to 5 coaches which one kind of feels right, which one they kind of want to be in a locker room with. And that usually what is in the most recent history, that's usually where kids lean to. And I think that's a great way to choose.
Yeah. It's funny when you, again, Daniel Pink's Power of Regret, that the thing you regret most is when you don't follow your gut. Statistically, that's the thing you regret the most. And I think weeding out the non-players, that just isn't right fit for you. This is right for you. And then getting down to your gut, so your gut can make a clear decision on the 3 to 5. I think super important.
Here's a couple of tricks I've learned on that too.
Yeah,
right? Let's say you're down to 2 schools, and we can use this for college or who to take to the Sadie Hawkins dance or whatever. Right? Flip a coin. Heads is school A, B is, or tails is school B. You flip it, and if it lands, and immediately you're excited it landed that way, that's your gut. If for a split second you're like, I wish it would have been the other one, that's your gut. And you can't control how that reaction is. That's one test right there to help you make a decision. And the second one is wake up one morning and say, I'm going to school A. How does that feel first thing in the morning? And the next day, wake up and say, I'm going to school B. How does that feel? And your gut can kind of tell you right there first thing in the morning without any other distractions that have been presented so far in the day. Those are 2 great tests there to kind of figure out what the insides are saying. And I tell my clients to do that because I've had long conversations with kids and their families. Like, I like school A, but I like school B, and I like school A, and I like school B. I don't know. And of course we do the pros and cons, like who's got the better, which coach do you like more? Which, campus do you like more? Which style fits better? Which one has the academics you want? What's the better location? Blah, 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 blah. But it always comes down to my thesis sentences, the coach, and then your gut.
Yeah. No, I like that. I like that systemizing it to test your emotion around it. That's really good.
And families ask me too, like, where would you send your son, Cory? And I say, I'm not going to answer that. It does not matter where I would send my son. I'm not the one going through this 9 months. You're going to be the one going through this 9 months. So I want you to make this choice and you be excited with it. And once you make the decision, like I said earlier, don't look back.
Yeah. Like when I'm advising, now I have all these guys in the portal every year. And even when they played for me and they were kind of going in the portal, I'd help them with whatever. Because I always felt like, if it didn't work out the next time, then what was the point of this all? Right. So let's do everything we can to help them find the right place for them. But I'd always just say, like, let's just get it down to the people that you really can fit with. And let's not get caught up in some of the BS, which we can easily get to. I'm just going to keep calling them distractions. Was it distractions of making that decision? Again, like you said, you're going through this. It's your job to make this decision. So don't worry about what I compare it to.
Yeah.
Because I'm not living in those shoes every day. But I can help you. When someone's giving you the BS, I can help weed that out for you and say, well, that's not what I'm hearing from on my side of it. But if you're okay with that, I told a kid this last week. Well, he goes, I love this coach. I said, well, I know some guys who played for him that didn't love him. I was like, but if you're okay with this, and this, then that might be the place you need to go. But you just need to know right up in front that he might sell a certain way, and then the day-to-day might be completely different. Which is true for probably most of us. But you need to know the ranges of that relationship you're going to have, and be able to make a decision on whether or not you can work with that. Like I had one kid was going to transfer someplace, and the guy who was closest on the team entered the portal a week after entered the portal a week after he visited. And I was like, well, what does that tell you? You know what I mean? Like, and so it's kind of interesting, but I think those are the kind of things that I think when you're on the inside of it, a little bit more, because you can operate a little bit more business-like.
Mm-hmm. But how's a kid going to know that without having someone like you that's been around?
All right. Just give it a little bit of time and listen to what's around you. And this is what I know. But again, I mean, I love your approach with it. It's just like, it's not my decision though. You just got to know this is where it is. And once you know where it is, if you're okay with that 1 year, go for it. Well, shoot, dude, I've taken up a ton of your time. We do this thing here on Last Call where it's the end of the night. The bell's being rung by the bartender. You've got 2 seats beside you at the bar. On the left side of you, you've got someone who's retired. On the right side of you, you've got someone who's still actively working, no family. What 2 people are you going to have on your left and your right? Left retired, right still working.
Does that have to be basketball?
No, it can be anything. It's better when it's anything.
Still working is Trent Reznor for 9 Inch Nails.
Ooh, man, he's
one of my favorite
guy.
Been one of my favorite bands, and it's just his music grabs me. I used to be a heavy metal DJ. I've mellowed quite a bit since those days. even though I did put on some Slayer this morning during my leg workout at the gym. But Trent Reznor on the right, because he's made some of my favorite songs of all time, and I just want to dig in, and would just ask him, where do your ideas come from? How do you put it down on a computer? And I know there's way more important people in the world. And I've discussed this before with family and friends, but to me, he has some of my favorite songs, and I just want to nerd out and ask about him.
Well, Trent has a major, people probably don't realize the major effect he's had on music. He essentially brought into mainstream a genre that wasn't there before him and before 9 Inch Nails, and brought it to the pop culture. So I'm not a huge 9 Inch Nails fan. I wouldn't, but I could, if you put their music on, I'd be able to listen to, but I could recognize his historical reference within music.
Yeah, and now he's scoring movies and winning Oscars, right? Which, how do you get into that? So he's interesting guy in that aspect. And retired, that's tough. I don't know many retired people. People are usually working until the day they die. People don't just sit back and stop. That's a good question, Jamion. I'd say Rick Pitino, but he was retired briefly, and now he's not anymore. Guys like that can't sit down. I mean, I met him plenty of times, played with his son, but just I think the way he coaches and can turn programs around is fascinating. And I know he's been on plenty of podcasts. He's written books. I've read them all. So just off the top of my cuff, Trent Reznor and Rick Pitino, even though Rick's not retired, but he was for a minute. Those are my answers. I'd give you better ones if I thought about it more.
You get a 50 on the grade for this.
I'll give you that. I'll take it. I'll have to study harder for the next one.
But you get an A+ for doing a great job on the pod, man. I appreciate you, and I appreciate your friendship through the years. And where can people find you at?
Yeah, so my website is prepathletics.com, and everything you need's on there. My email, my phone number, and we got a podcast as well, which Jamion was on a couple weeks ago. And we got tons of articles on there. So if you're thinking about prep school, if you're curious about it, most information's on there. And feel free to reach out. If you're a college coach, I can help you with connecting you to prep school coaches. If you're a player, reach out. I'll give you a quick, honest assessment if it can work or not. If you're a parent, I got a lot of resources on there. And I'm mainly on Twitter for social media if you want to reach out that way. But I love the prep school world. It changed my life, changed my cousin's life, changed our family's trajectory. And I just want, for the right kids, I want to make sure if they are looking at prep school, they get in touch with the right fitting prep school. So that's my pitch.
Well, thanks for joining us on Last Call. Until next time. Thank you for joining us on The Last Call, powered by Speakeasy, where careers grow through relationships and relationships grow through Speakeasy. We hope you enjoyed it, and we look forward to connecting with you soon.